If you have your Bibles, if you will turn to the book of Judges with me, Judges chapter 9. If you read through the book of Judges, by the way, they are never going to make a movie on the book of Judges. They're never going to make a movie about they can do parts of the book of Judges, but they're not going to do it accurately because there would not be a rating high enough to give that movie. The book of Judges has a few little issues in it. It's a very violent book. A lot of evil is done in the book of Judges. One of the key phrases is the people did what was right in their own eyes. They weren't following after God. They just did what they did right in their own eyes. They forgot about God a lot. The book of Judges is it's an interesting book because you see this, it's almost like a ping pong game or a ping pong or tennis match that you're watching where the people are saying, oh, let's follow God. And then the next page you turn it and like they left God. And now God has to send them in a judge and bring the people back to God. So now they're back with God. That's great. Good news. But then you turn the page or maybe go a little lower on that same page. And you're like, oh, yeah, they're back. They're not with God anymore. It's back and forth, back and forth. The people leave God and God brings a judge in to bring them back to God, and it just keeps switching sides throughout the book. Gideon is one of my favorite stories in the book of Judges. He's the guy that God gives him plenty of people, and God says, well, there's too many. Too many people. I can't use this many people, and takes him down to 300 men to fight against an innumerous amount of people. The story of Gideon is definitely God fighting for us, not anything that we're able to do, but everything that God's able to do. And the story of Gideon, I like the fact that it starts out with Gideon has all these people, and God says, yeah, that's too many. That's never a problem for any army. That's never been a problem. There's no military ever that says, yeah, see, we're too strong. We're too strong. We need to weaken ourselves before we are equipped to fight this. But the story of Gideon, that's exactly what God does. He's like, yeah, still too much. And lets you know that God's doing the fighting, not us. It's not our strength. So there's a huge twist in the story of Gideon. In my opinion, a good movie, any good movie is one where I can say, I did not see that coming. I love those movies. I remember, and I'm not promoting a movie here, but I do remember, if any of you've seen The Sixth Sense, nobody gave me nobody warned me on that movie. And when we got to the end of that movie, I went, I start over. Start that, that is not, no. I missed something. There was a huge twist in this. So if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to ruin it for you, nor am I going to promote it or condone it, because honestly, we watch things on a edited version, and I don't know what the unedited version would be. So I like to see a movie that has a good twist. I love a good twist. My favorite movies are the ones that present an impossible scenario, and then an earlier mentioned but forgotten detail comes back later on in the movie and solves the impossible problem. I like those movies. I'm intrigued by those. This morning I want to look at a story which has no twist at all, but in order for it to have the no twist, it must include a small twist. So I hope I have your attention with that. There has to be a small twist in order for there to be no twist at all. The reason it has no twist is because it never changes course. But in order for it to stay on course, the unexpected has to happen. So I want to go into this story. And by the way, it's not the story of Gideon. So there's a twist already. We're not even talking about him. In Judges chapter 8, we see the end of Gideon's life. That's the end of his story. Gideon was a judge who delivered Israel from the hand of Midian. Then he went on to achieve other victories. This captures the attention of all the people of Israel, and they want to make this proposition right here. Look at Judges chapter 8 and verse 22. It says, then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, both you and your son and your grandson also, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. The people are wanting a king, and Gideon directs their attention back to God as their king, which I really respect that. So we want you to be our king. You be our king, your son can be our king, your grandson can be our king. And Gideon says, actually, God should be your king. You win all the way around there. Let God be your king. The position was offered to Gideon, his son, and his grandson, but no deal. No deal. No, we're not going to do that. Let God be your king. Now, these next two verses finish up the background story to the story I want to focus on this morning. Look at these next two verses, Judges 8, chapter 8, verse 30 and 31. Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son whose name he called Abimelech. Abimelech's story is the one I want to talk about today. And by the way, I heard the shock value when it said Gideon had 70 sons. What else he do? That's a lot of kids. It's a lot of kids that were his offspring. These aren't adopted. These are his kids. But then he has one kid from a concubine who's from Shechem, and his name was called Abimelech. Abimelech is Gideon's son, but it's a different mother. He has this child with concubine. Also, Gideon's other name is Jerubbaal. So that way when you see it, you know that we're talking about Gideon. So in this next chapter, it refers to Gideon as Jerubbaal. That is still talking about Gideon. So when you see that name, understand that we're talking about him. So Gideon, or Jerubbaal, has refused the position of the king. But his son Abimelech is kind of intrigued by this position. You still got Abimelech. Now all the 70 sons, they're saying, hey, we're with dad. You know, the position of king, we're not going to do that. But Abimelech's going, whoa, king what? Let's talk about this position. I'm intrigued by this offer of my family being the king of Israel. So he goes to his mom's side of the family to get a little bit of support. Remember, his mom is from Shechem. Look at Judges chapter 9 and verse 2. Please speak in the hearing of all the men of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal reign over you, or that one reign over you? Remember that I am your own flesh and bone. And his mother's brothers spoke all these words concerning him in the hearing of all the men of Shechem, and their heart was inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. Finally, the people have a potential king in their midst. Abimelech comes up and says, hold on, I'm still connected to Gideon, but I'm going to talk to mom's side of the family here and try to persuade them to make me king. Now the people are saying, well, we have potential here. There is somebody in Gideon's line that could be king. Abimelech has stepped up to lead the people. He just has one problem. He has 70 brothers who will definitely stand in opposition to this scenario. You know, my brothers, all 70 of them, they're not going to like this move. When the kingship was offered, none of them took the offer. Not one of them. The 70 guys, it went through, that proposition was made to Gideon's sons. All 7 of these guys said, no, let God be your king. Just let God be your king. Not one of them took the offer. So in order for Abimelech to take this role, the brothers have to go. You got to get rid of the brothers because that's going to be a potential problem. Abimelech hires a bunch of evil men and they begin to follow his orders. Look at verse 5 of chapter 9. Then he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left because he hid himself. Abimelech just killed his own brothers for a chance to write his own story the way he wanted to write his story. Like, I want to be king, but they're going to stand in opposition to me, so I'm going to kill all of them. He kills his own brothers so he can write his own story. But his youngest brother, Jotham, slips through his fingers and goes into hiding. You got the youngest one. He gets out of there. Now that the brothers are out of the way, Abimelech is anointed king. He got what he wanted. He wrote his story. This is how it's going. He finally has the story the way he wants it. But I don't know about you. For me, a lot of times our stories don't end up the way we want them to go, even when things are currently going our way. That doesn't mean it's going to end up the way we wrote it out for ourselves. That's exactly what Abimelech needed to know. Sometimes when you're writing your own story, if you're doing it wrong or you're doing it other than what God wants for you, even though everything's going right now, sometimes it's going to come crashing down on you. It's happened to me. I know it's probably happened to maybe one of you. But sometimes our story doesn't go the way we want it to, even when we're doing things right. Everything currently is going our way. Once the people anoint Abimelech to be king, the news was taken to his youngest brother Jotham. All right, he's king now. Let's get the news to Jotham. Somebody gets this news to this youngest brother. Look at verse 7 of Judges chapter 9. Now when they told Jotham, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim and lifted his voice and cried out. And he said to them, "Listen to me, you men of Shechem, that God may listen to you." Jotham just came out of hiding because Abimelech and his followers needed a message from the Lord. This youngest brother, God is speaking to Jotham. I know you're hiding, but I kind of need you to get out there and tell him something. So Jotham comes out of hiding long enough to tell them a message from God. He begins to tell them what's happening, but he does it in story form. A lot of times people would speak in story form because that grabs your attention real quick. Something's different about this. It's building. Nathan talked to David the same way. Well, let me tell you about this case, about this guy with these sheep. It wasn't even about that. It was a story illustrating the real event. Jotham does this same thing. So let's look at the story here. Starting in verse 8. The trees once went forth to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, "Reign over us." But the olive tree said to them, "Should I cease giving my oil, with which they honor God and men, and go to sway over trees?" Then the tree said to the fig tree, "You come and reign over us." But the fig tree said to them, "Should I cease my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to sway over the trees?" Then the tree said to the vine, "You come and reign over us." But the vine said to them, "Should I cease my new wine, which cheers both God and men, and go to sway over the trees?" Then all the trees said to the bramble, "You come and reign over us." And the bramble said to the trees, If in truth you anoint me as king over you, then come and take shelter in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon." It seems like a rather odd way to deliver a message. If you heard somebody come up to you and start talking about this, you're like, okay, what is he reading? What does all that mean? He's telling them in story form. So once you start talking about a story about trees, you're like, what? Now you're going to listen to the rest of this, just try to find out what crazy guy's talking about. He's giving you a parable. So they're listening to the whole thing. He does it in parable form, which probably has the attention of everybody. Because I know if somebody were to start talking to me like that, you got my attention. I don't know where you're going with this, but I'm going to ride this one out. The trees did what? So now I'm glued. In this parable, he illustrates Gideon and his sons and his grandson with the picture of these plants which bear good fruit. The olive tree and the fig tree and the vine. You went to them and asked them to be your king. He then illustrates Abimelech as a bramble, which is a thorn bush. This is something that's going to bring no nourishment to the people. You went to the olive tree, you went to the fig tree, you went to the vine and asked them to be king. And when they said no, you went to the bramble. You're not going to get any nourishment from the bramble. But you asked the bramble to be your king. Here's where Jotham gives them a chance to repent. And I love the fact that God always offers us that. It's never God just says, hey, you messed up, this is it. No, there's always that chance of repentance. God does give that to us. He questions their motives, and he gives them the opportunity to examine themselves for who they are. I'm going to give you a chance here. Were your actions done with integrity or not? Here's the question. What you did, you went to the olive tree, you went to the fig tree, you went to the vine, they all said no. So you made the bramble your king. Here's the question. Did you do that with integrity or not? Did you kill the 70 brothers with the best of intentions? Were your actions noble? Did you treat the household of Gideon in the way they deserved? Just go ahead and examine yourself. Did you do it for integrity? Did you do it for righteousness' sake? Examine your own life. If so, keep the story moving the way it is. If so, go ahead and do that. Look at verse 19 of Judges 9. If then you have acted in truth and sincerity with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem and Beth Millo. And let the fire from the men of Shechem and Beth Millo and come from Shechem and from Beth Millo and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled, and he went to Beer and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech his brother. Jotham came out of hiding just long enough to tell the people how the story goes, and then he goes back into hiding. He comes out, says, let me tell you this story. You ask one person to be king. He says no. You go to the next, and they say no. And then you choose something that's not going to give you any nourishment at all. You ask Abimelech to be your king. Now, if you did this with righteousness' sake, then move forward. But if you did not, let the people destroy Abimelech, and let Abimelech destroy the people. That's how the story is laid out. And then he goes back into hiding. Now, if they like the direction the story's heading in, if they have no doubt that they were in the right, then just rejoice in your current condition. Just go ahead, live it up. But if you know your version of the story is wrong, and you continue to move forward anyway, Abimelech will destroy you, and you will destroy Abimelech. That's an incredible gift Jotham just gave to the people. He told them the outcome of their decisions. He read their story to them. Now, I wouldn't mind if somebody says, oh, by the way, the path you're going down, this is how it's going to end up. Now, you can either choose to keep going down that path, or you can switch. That would be a decent offer, right? That would be a good gift. Like, hey, what you're doing is going to end up in ruin. You want to keep doing that? No. I would like door number 2, please. That's a good gift. That would be nice to have. That's what he does for them. Of course, there is time to evaluate themselves, their motives, and repent, but that's not what they choose to do. Look at verse 22. After Abimelech had reigned over Israel 3 years, God sent a spirit of ill will between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the crime done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be settled, and their blood be laid on Abimelech their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who aided him in the killing of his brothers. Here comes the fulfillment of Jotham's parable. This is what Jotham said was going to happen. If you keep going down this path, if you want to keep going down, if you like your story as is, then keep living it up. But if your intentions were wrong, if you did what was wrong, this is how it's going to end up. Now, this is your choice, but this is how it's going to unfold. They did not turn to God. They just continued moving forward as is. That's the choice they made. Now the real family feud begins. Here's where the story just amps up for us. Now, to make a long story short, we could go through all the details of this chapter, but let's just make a long story short here. A man named Gaal rises up and convinces the men of Shechem that he should lead instead of Abimelech. So, of course, we've got a new problem here. We got a new character here. He's like, hey, by the way, I think I'd do a better job. And now the people are going, we do have a few issues with Abimelech. Maybe you would be the better option. It's kind of like politics work, right? This is what you've experienced this long. Would you like to change? Would you like to do something different? That's all that's going on here. So this guy named Gaal steps up and says, hey, I think you would be better off if you choose me to be your king. This news gets back to Abimelech, and it's on like Donkey Kong. Like, what? Somebody wants to be king instead of me? Yes, he's persuading the people to vote for him. Like, well, I don't think so. So now we've got attacks happening from both sides, back and forth, until Abimelech gets the advantage. Look at verse 45. So Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He took the city and killed the people who were in it, and he demolished the city and sowed it with salt. Now when all the men of the tower of Shechem had heard that, they entered the stronghold of the temple of the god Berith. Abimelech enters the city. He destroys the city. He kills the people, and he makes it so nothing can grow there anymore. He just wants to completely wipe this place out. But several of these men get away, and they hide themselves in the temple of their false gods. This is where we're introduced to the kind of man Abimelech really was. We get a good view of his heart here. This is where we get to see the really dark side of this man. He cuts off a branch. He cuts a branch off of a tree, and he throws it over his shoulders, and he tells the men to do the same thing. Grab a branch. Look at verse 49. So each of the people likewise cut down his bough and followed Abimelech, put them against the stronghold, and set the stronghold on fire above them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women. Abimelech just killed around 1,000 people by burning them alive inside of a building. Now we see the heart of Abimelech. We get a good view of what this man was all about. But it doesn't get his anger out of his system. Just because he does that, he's still got so much anger in him. So he moves to the next town and to destroy it also. He's going to keep the ball rolling here. Just as Jotham predicted, Abimelech was going to destroy the people that followed him. Here he goes. Remember, the bramble's going to destroy you, and then you're going to destroy the bramble. Now, Abimelech is actually destroying the people who were following him. Look at verse 50. Then Abimelech went to Thebez, and he encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women, all the people of the city, fled there and shut themselves in. Then they went up to the top of the tower. So Abimelech came as far as the tower and fought against it, and he drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. Abimelech strikes again. What he just did to the previous town, he burnt these people alive inside this building. Now all the people in the next town run into the tower, and they go up to the top of the tower, and Abimelech says, hey, it worked the first time. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to burn these people alive. This is the fulfillment of the first part of Jotham's prophecy. The bramble is going to destroy you. What Abimelech doesn't realize is that while he's trying to kill all the men who followed him, God's setting up the plot twist that he doesn't see coming. There's a small twist going to happen here. This story has no changes in it according to what Jotham said would happen. There's no changes. Jotham says if you keep going down this road, this is exactly what's going to happen. And so far, there's no twist at all. Everything's following according to the parable. But up in that tower, there's a woman who's thinking on her feet. This is what Abimelech's not realizing is there's this girl up here, up in the tower. I've got the tower surrounded. I'm going to burn this tower and the people in it. But up there, there's this woman who's thinking on her feet. She's trying to figure out something. This is where the small twist accomplishes what Jotham said. Look at verse 53. But a certain woman dropped an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor-bearer, and said to him, draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him. So the young man thrust him through, and he died. Well, that ended quickly. We're seeing this story build up. Small plot twist. In order for the story not to take a turn at all, there was this little twist that happens, so the story has no twist at all. It's going just the way Jotham said it would go. It's not going to take a twist. It's not going to take a turn. But to make it go straight, there's this small little detail. As Abimelech is trying to set things up to burn this tower down, there's this one girl up there somewhere looking around, and she finds an upper millstone. A millstone, the lower millstone was the dish that you would put the grain in. The upper millstone was this really heavy stone that you'd put on it and roll over that grain and crush the grain. That's so you're going to make your flour and stuff. So she takes this extremely heavy stone, the upper millstone, and looks down at the ground and just goes, and the story's over. The bramble killed the people, and the people killed the bramble. Just like Jotham said was going to happen. Abimelech was killed by a baking utensil. Did not see that coming. How you doing, Abimelech? I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger. What's the matter, baking utensil? I didn't see that one. I was writing my own story, and I did not see the baking utensil. It came out of nowhere. I got killed. My story's over. Why? Because a woman took an upper millstone, tosses it out of the tower, and it lands on Abimelech's head. But even after this millstone crushed his skull, he was still trying to write his own story. Do you see that his heart hasn't changed at all? He's still trying to write his own story. He asked the armor bearer to kill him so it wouldn't be said that a woman killed him. You're going to die. Would you kill me? Why? Because I don't want anybody to know that a woman killed me. Well, I got some news for you, Abimelech. In 2021, we still know you were beat up by a girl. Story didn't change for you. You were still trying to write your story to your last breath. I need you to kill me. And the guy went ahead and thrust the sword through him. He died. But we know how it went down because God went ahead and said, yeah, that's how you wanted the story to go, but I'm going to go ahead and put in my word how the story really went, so your story doesn't have the power you wanted it to have. The truth is going to prevail. You got beat up by a girl, and it's going to be known for every age from here on out. Abimelech got beat up by a girl with a baking utensil. That's how your story's going down. And when we read it, we thought, yeah, that's how it went down. The story of Abimelech is a story that ended tragically. But in the middle of the story, he was given the opportunity to change and turn everything around. He was given the opportunity. He was told that the negative choices and the negative approach he was taking to life would ultimately end in ruin. You keep going down this path, it's going to end up in ruin. But Jotham did say, listen to me, that God may listen to you. Well, there's reconciliation being offered here. Listen to me so that God may listen to you. When Jotham what he was offering was the opportunity to insert a plot twist in your story. This is how your story is going, Abimelech. But you have an opportunity to put a twist in there. You can keep it going the way you want to, or we can turn things now. You have the opportunity. But Abimelech says, no, I'll just continue to write my own story. He didn't write the baking utensil part, but God went ahead and inserted that for him. But he's writing his own story. You can put a plot twist in here, Abimelech, if you'd like to. No, I'll just keep writing it my own way. Even after the murder of Gideon's 70 sons, Jotham gave him a chance to reconcile things with God. Even after that brutal event. You still have an opportunity, Abimelech. There's still a chance here. But he didn't listen. Everyone listening to this sermon has a story with similarities. Every one of us do. But we also have extreme differences in our stories. How would you like a plot twist? That would be, some of us would say, yeah, I wouldn't mind one of those right now. I'm not really liking how this one's unfolding. A plot twist would be good. Maybe you're trying to separate yourself from things that you've done in the past. Maybe you're still stuck on something you've done in the past. Maybe you've done something you're not proud of, but you define yourself by that event. Maybe you're currently living in a way you know is not right. You know the path you're going down. Or maybe you feel that is a chance that if you died today, you don't know where you'd spend eternity. If I keep going down this path I'm going down, I don't know how it's going to end for me. I'm a little concerned. How would you feel about your story taking a different turn? How would you like a plot twist? In any of these scenarios, how would you like a twist? I want to show you something that happened in Jesus' hometown in Mark chapter 6. Look at Mark chapter 6 and verse 5. Now he could do no mighty work there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. Then he went about the villages in a circuit teaching. This verse has always amazed me. This is Jesus in the town, his hometown. Jesus wasn't able to do any mighty works among those people. It says he could do no mighty works there. What's stopping him? We're talking about Jesus here. Why were you able to do it everywhere else, but you couldn't do it here, Jesus? What's stopping you? Why does it say you could do no mighty works here? What's stopping you? We know he's able to, because we've seen other stories with evidence saying that Jesus is able to do mighty works. We know he can do this, but this says he wasn't able to do it there. So what's hindering him? And this is what it says is the hindrance. It was their unbelief. I can do these things for you. I can do these mighty works, but I'm not able to do it here. Why not? Because of your unbelief. Now you might be saying, well, I already believe in Jesus, so how does that story apply to me? I think we should go back to what the word belief actually means. Let's go back to what the word believe means. The word believe means to entrust. When you see this in the Bible, it means to entrust. It doesn't mean, you persuaded me, I'm completely convinced that this is true. It's not persuasion, it's entrust. I can say I believe that an airplane will hold me up as I travel. I can say that. I believe that airplane would work. But if I refuse to get on it because of my fear that it won't do that, would you say I really believe? Like, do you believe that airplane will hold you up if you travel on it? Yeah. You want to get on it? Absolutely not. Not a chance. Why? Because it's really heavy. And it can't do what it does. Do you believe that the airplane, if you got on the airplane and traveled on the airplane, it could hold you up? Yes, I believe. Get on it? No. Would you say I'm a believer? Well, not anybody in here would say, yeah, he really does believe that. No, you'd say he does not. He does not believe the airplane can do what he has seen the airplane do. Apparently, he is a person that is heavier than all other people. So if he gets on it personally, it won't be able to do what he knows it can do. I can say I believe something. I'm persuaded that it can do it because I see it happening. I'm persuaded that the airplane can do that. Will you get on it? No, I won't. That tells you immediately my belief isn't in the ability of that airplane. I haven't entrusted anything to that airplane. Believing is entrusting. It's turning something over to something or someone else, knowing that the outcome will be certain. That's what it is. That's what belief is. I am forfeiting everything. I'm turning it all over to this something or someone, knowing that the outcome is going to be certain down this path. The reason Jesus wasn't able to do a great work, it was because of unbelief. They would not entrust Jesus with their story. They weren't going to do it. Jotham was begging Abimelech to listen to him. He wanted him to allow God to rewrite the story. Abimelech, please. This is what it's going to happen. This is where it's going here. Don't do this. Listen to me so that God can listen to you. But Abimelech doesn't do that. God is really good at writing twists. He's very, very good at that. What if I were to tell you that there was once a nation who wanted nothing to do with God, and 40 days later they entrusted God with their future? You would want to know, well, what's the twist? They want nothing to do with God, and a little over a month later they're all entrusting God with their future? Yeah. What was the twist? What was the twist? So what if I told you, well, God sent a prophet who refused to tell them about God? That's what happened. You would still say, what's the twist? Because if they want nothing to do with God, and then they repented and turned to God, something had to happen to change them. Oh yeah, so what happened? Oh, God sent a prophet who refused to tell them. Okay, still not working. What's the twist? What's the twist? Oh, that prophet was swallowed by a whale. He was in there for 3 days and 3 nights, and then he repented. Now that's quite a twist. That God's really good at that. He's really good at providing a twist to a story. He's so good at it. But he cannot do the mighty works in a life that refuses to entrust him with that story. He cannot do it. You have to entrust him with the story, and he can rewrite that thing. He can do it. He's really good at doing it, and he would love to do it. Abimelech refused to allow anyone but himself to write his story. He was still trying to write it with his dying breath. He was trying to protect his manly reputation even to the death. Kill me. I don't want them to know a girl beat me up. I don't want, please, kill me. He's still trying to write it even at the end. God wants us to humble ourselves and turn the story over to him. I don't know what your story is. I don't know the details of what you're going through. But some of our stories, we know if we continue going down this path. Maybe we've seen destruction in our wake. And like, yeah, I've seen my decisions and how poorly the results turned out because of the life I've been living or the way I'm going, the path I'm going down. So the future's going to turn out worse if I keep going down this path. I don't know what your story is. Maybe you are doing something you are not supposed to be doing. Maybe you're defining yourself in a different way than God's defining you. And you see yourself as not worthy to be defined by what he says about you. If you keep going down that path, it's going to destroy you. It's not going to lift you up. So what does God tell us to do? Look at 1 Peter 5 and verse 6. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Humbling yourself under the mighty hand of God is the act of entrusting him to write your story. I'm going to submit, God. I don't know where my story's heading. I know it doesn't look good right now, but if I turn the story over to you, could you rewrite it? That doesn't mean you're going to get everything you want. It just means the end turns out really good because God is really good. Really good. It's giving him the broken version and enjoying the twist he brings to the story. God, if I hang on to this story and just keep trying to write it myself, it could end up in a dark place. So I'm going to hand it to you and I'm going to ask you, can you provide a twist? Can you turn this thing? I'm humbling myself under the mighty hand of God. Jotham warned Abimelech of what the story would look like if he continued down the path he was going. You continue down this path, this is how it's going to end up. That day, he was offered the opportunity to let God rewrite the whole thing. Go ahead, turn away. Let God rewrite it. Now, I may not know your story, but I know someone who can give it an incredible ending. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if it's dark times. I don't know if you've had poor decisions. I don't know what's going on. But I do know somebody who can give your story an incredible ending regardless of what's happened so far. He's an amazing God. We may need to surrender pride or greed or selfishness. We might need to surrender past mistakes or current decisions. I don't know what it is. And I'm not sure how your story is going, but I know whatever God wants to do with it has a better ending than what we could write for ourselves. He does a good job. He can write so much better ending than we can write. He can think of, Abimelech didn't know to insert any details about the baking utensil. Nothing. He didn't say, and no baking utensil will hit my head. He didn't even think of that. He didn't think of that. God can rewrite better than we can write. So we've got to let God rewrite our story. I love those stories that consist of the impossible scenario. Then an unexpected twist turns the story around and returns hope to the story. I love those stories. I love those stories. I want to show you what God says about these kind of stories. Look at Jeremiah 33 and verse 3. Call to me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. There's a twist. There's a twist. You want to see something awesome happen with your broken story? Call to me. Call to me. I will answer you. We can write this thing. We can give it a twist. And I will show you great and mighty things which you do not know. You didn't see that coming. I want to do this for your story. It all starts when you entrust him with your story. Let him have that. Let him have that story. Sometimes it's difficult to turn things over to God. I've been there. Sometimes it's difficult to do that. Sometimes it can be scary, and sometimes you don't even feel worthy of his involvement in your story because you're so hard on yourself because of what you've done that it's hard to give that story over to God and let him rewrite it because you don't even feel like you deserve a rewrite. But God says, hey, would you call to me? Because I'm going to answer you and wait till you see the plot twist. Oh, this is going to be really cool, but you got to give that story to me. Why weren't you able to do great and mighty things with the people of Nazareth? Because their unbelief. They wouldn't entrust me with it. They wouldn't believe. So if you will just go ahead and hand me your story. Just give me your story. I'm not worthy for a rewrite. Yeah, but I love you so much. I would love to rewrite this for you. Yeah, but it's so broken. Lazarus was dead for 4 days. He turned out okay. God is a big, big God. That's an amazing twist. He's been dead 4 days. He stinks. That's exactly what they told him. Roll the stone away from the tomb. Jesus, he's been dead for 4 days. He stinks. Roll it away. All right. Then Lazarus comes walking out of the tomb. 4 days dead is a pretty dim diagnosis. You know what kind of doctor it would take to turn that story around? Because there's only one physician I know who could do that. And it's the great physician. Let me have your story. Because I'm going to give you a plot twist that's going to blow your mind. But what if it doesn't turn out how I want it to turn out? Will you entrust me that it will turn out right anyway? Let me have your story. Just let me have your story. I'll write you a twist. I'll put it in there. I'm not worthy of it. I am. I'm worthy. So can I have what I'm asking for because I'm worthy to receive what I'm asking for? Would you let me have your story? Because I would like to rewrite it from this point on. Sometimes it just comes down to letting go of our plans. Let go of your plans. I don't know how I'm going to write this story. You're not the author. Why are you still trying to write? Let God take this. God is good. God is so good. He's more experienced at writing stories than we will ever be. He always has our best interest in mind. Always. Always. So you turn your story over to him and let him write the twist. Let him do that. I don't know what your story is. I don't know what you're dealing with right now. But if we continue going down the road we're going down right now, is it possible that it could turn out dark because we're trying to write it ourselves? Maybe it's time to surrender everything over to God and say, okay, it's us. It's me with you. I'm not going to try to write this myself. I'm writing it side by side with you, or you're writing it side by side with me. But God, you're really good at putting a plot twist in there. So good. One of my favorite plot twists in the Bible, maybe you've heard of it. There's this little baby who was laid in a manger during a time where during tax season, which is the darkest time of anybody's life. And then a king was trying to kill him, so they had to flee to Egypt. And then he came back, he grew up. Then they brutally murdered him on a cross and put him in a grave. Story's over. Plot twist. It's not over. It's not over. Because now the life the sin nature that you have, the spirit that you have in with you, I'd like to take that away and put my spirit in you. Plot twist. Satan says, the Son of God is dead. It's over. Story's over. I win. And then Jesus says, but I have something to say. You're not supposed to say anything. You're dead. Plot twist. He can do the same thing for your life. I want to give you an ending to your story, which is amazing. But we have to entrust him with that story. Let him have your story and let him write the twist.